Nice little show. Spent a lot of money, but
Yeah.
like
There's $100.
yeah. But you know, it's safe because you're out in the middle of the lake. They're all in the water.
I think there was a little fire at the moment once.
I was gonna say, there was at least one of those that didn't look like it blew up before it went out there, and there was little fires on the dam.
But it's amazing how many fireworks you hear, you know, at night, like starting about the second to about the fifth.
Yeah.
You go to bed at night, you're just normally at midnight, at least in my area, I haven't heard too many, but up till midnight there. Scott, you doing all right?
I'm fine, how are you?
Good.
You start from scratch.
We bought the land in 17, and then we did the house a year and a half ago. Bigger project than expected.
Yeah, they're pretty significant.
How are you, sir?
How are you?
How big a
Good.
slope do you have?
Not that bad.
You can drive a truck down.
Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, nice to meet you.
Avoid that part. What lake are you on?
Enjoying the summer, how about you?
But have a competition early morning. Tuesday,
Traveling much?
Yeah, too much.
3 construction.
Last 2 weeks I've been around.
Yeah,
So, it's been good.
all the materials are all over.
Sales are down, bids are up.
Go.
My goal this summer.
Start having sales slip.
No. We
Why?
gotta get off
Why
that
is
now,
this
so
happening?
it's not travel. All the big sales right now. How are you from travel? It's kind of all over. It's like our internal meetings, they try to rush induction as well, so I think that is.
Hey, Rick. How are you?
We're not their office in the shop. You guys have
Quiet? Sandy, Trey? Okay. Thanks everyone for being here. It's 2 o'clock. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We've got a lot on the agenda today, so we'll just move right along. I want to welcome the new members, Scott Hawes, Rob Montgomery, and Kevin Addison. We've got 3 new members. They've replaced 3 outgoing members, and so we look forward to good things from you guys. Thanks for being here today. First thing I want to do is any additions to the agenda that you have in front of you? Okay, I'll assume that's a no. Sorry, I thought I had it on. Next thing I want to do is approval of the previous meeting minutes. Carol put out the minutes. Can we get a approval for the previous?
Accept them as written.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, first, second, all right. Tom, any comments from you?
No comments, but I do, I'll hold on to my comments for the committee member training.
Great. Board member comments? Anybody have anything to say? Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do is I've got these kind of in reverse order, but I'd like to do the election of officers first and then let Tom do the committee training. So he's gonna go through a brief 5 or 10 minute presentation on what it is, what your responsibilities and duties are as a committee member. So in that vein, to start off the election of officers, I'm gonna nominate Carol Phillips as our secretary. And so if we can go ahead and take a vote on that now. So unless anybody else wants to run for secretary, I'll leave that open too. You can jump in at any time if you want to, somebody wants to run for secretary. All right, so can I get a motion to approve Carol?
Motion to approve Carol as
Okay.
secretary.
Second, all right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Carol by unanimous vote. Okay, now we need
I'll
2 more.
make a motion to nominate Matt as chairman again.
Okay. Okay, anybody, all in favor of that? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
And I'll make a motion to nominate Michael as vice chairman.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor of Michael being vice chair? Any opposed? Okay, so we have the election of officers. Keep in mind that even though you have an elected office, you don't have any more power than anybody else. Your vote counts the same as anybody else's. And from time to time, some of us miss meetings, and I'll ask Kelly or somebody to run a meeting from time to time. So, and keep in mind, if you'd like to have one of these offices, there'll be more opportunities in the future, I'm sure. So, okay, thanks for that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tom and let him do his talk.
So we do this training every year. This is our Joint Advisory Committee training, and just wanted to spend a couple of minutes going over this. First, wanted to talk about the purpose, to provide advice and recommendations to the board of directors. You'll notice that in going through each of these items, I'll actually cite the policy that supports it. So in this case, from policy 1.04, it is the duty of each committee to discuss, analyze, propose solutions for problems and opportunities within its area of concern, and to make recommendations to management or the board. So that gives the overall purpose. What are we doing here as a committee? We also have structure, the joint advisory committees, and if you're not aware, we have 3 of them: the lakes, which we're at right now, golf, which is on later on today, and then recreation committee. And all of them report to the board of directors, and that's covered in policy 1.03. Their composition and duties shall be directed by the board and in accordance with stated policies. Also, we have liaisons. So we have 2 liaisons, right there, 2 liaisons. And then one more over here. We have Sandy, Jeff, and Jerry are our 3 liaisons, and they've been appointed by the board of directors, and they're your intermediaries. They're working between the board of directors and the committees to make sure that we have a free flow of information between those 2 entities. And we have it covered in policy 1.04. The board chair shall appoint at least 2 non-voting liaisons from the board to each JAC. The key point there is non-voting. They're just here to advise, give you information, but also be that conduit of transfer of information from the committee to the board if any questions come up. In addition to that, you have management representative. So in this case, it's Rick. Rick is our management representative, and each committee will be assigned at least one management representative. Now, I normally go, but it's actually Rick's department that we're interacting with most of all. And John Urquhart in the corner there, he normally comes too. For Recreation Committee, you'll usually have 2 or 3 attend. Rick is always gracious enough to attend the Rec Committee also, because in many cases, Recreation and Lakes become one and the same. And then the Golf Committee will have the golf Director of Golf and the Director of Golf Course Maintenance. So the bylaws, according to policy 1.04, is you'll have a non-voting. Rick and I and John, we do not vote on anything, but we will advise because we're the ones that are working the issue on a daily basis. I'm going kind of fast. If anybody has any questions, definitely feel free to jump in. Report to the board. So on a monthly basis, the minutes, which Carol jumped in voluntarily to do another 15-year stint as secretary, those go to the board, and those minutes are included in the board packet that is presented to them every month. So they have that information, and then typically the board chair, or sometimes the board chair, will send us a summary, and the board will get a summary of what occurred at the most recent board meeting. So that way they get that information, and the board is aware of what's taking place at the committee level. Advisory, I think it's important to always point out, this is a joint advisory committee, and so for this slide, I'm going to focus in on the word advisory. The board of directors and management put a tremendous amount of weight to the recommendations by the committees. With that being said, the recommendations from the committees are advisory. So you don't have the authority to tell Rick, go hire 4 lake rangers. We have the authority, Rick, go do that. They can advise him to do so during a budgetary time frame. And if that works with our budget, and if the board is supportive of that, we'll include that. So the board puts a lot of weight on the recommendations. So I don't want you to ever think that the board does not value the opinions of the committee. But the committees are advisory, and policy 1.04, the committees has no authority on their own. That's a pretty direct statement on that, but they put a lot of credence, the board puts a lot of weight, a lot of credence to what they said. Recordings, so the meetings open to the membership will be streamed on social media in real time by the association, plus an unedited copy of the recording will be made available to the association's website. So for those if this is your first meeting, we have a camera there, a camera there, a camera here. We have all these microphones, and we have Chris there. Chris, giving us a wave. Chris is our producer, and he's actually live streaming the meeting right now. And we then take those recordings, and then we put them on our website, and we have about 5 years worth of meetings on record. If people are attending via Zoom, which we have multiple people attending via Zoom, you can actually see them on the screen, and then below the screen you'll see a camera, and that is the camera that they are seeing. So if you are actually talking to the screen, and I'm picking on Trey up there in the top right corner, if I'm talking to Trey, Trey is actually seeing my face as I'm speaking to him. Just make sure that when you speak, you have your green dot on your speaker so they can hear you at home. And if someone comes up, if a guest comes up and wants to speak, just make sure that they're not speaking from the sides, because those at home will not be able to hear them, but if they come up to the microphone, they'll do just fine. Okay. Open meetings. So in accordance with policy 1.01, JAC meetings shall be open to the members. We have several members, we call that the bullpen. We have several members in the bullpen. And so if you have a meeting, it is open. But with that being said, subcommittee meetings developing recommendations for the full committee may be closed to the membership. So sometimes we've had it before where the Lakes Committee will say, we want these 3 committee members to research this issue, go do the research, and then come back to us. When that subcommittee does not have to be open to the membership, but this meeting must be open to the membership. Community input. A critical function of the committees is to interact within the community and be open-minded to the suggestions of the community. The JACs also serves as a sounding board for members to express their concerns and suggestions. So you are a representative of the community. So talk to your neighbors, talk to your fellow boaters, talk to them. What is their input? And then bring that input back to the committee. Hey, I was talking to my buddy and he was expressing concern about this. We want that, be that conduit to the membership. So while we're happy that we have several guests joining us today, we are a community of 32,000 people and we have less than 5 guests here. So part of your job is to get out there and talk to, maybe you're in a club, maybe you're a part of the Fly Tires, maybe you fish with the same group of people on a consistent basis. Talk to them and bring that information back to the committee. It's important. Member open forum. Members are welcome to share their concerns or questions at each meeting. The members are limited to 3 minutes to express their thoughts. Members can make statements during the open forum, but this is not a debate forum. So when a member comes up during the open forum portion, they get to speak on that speaker, and Jessica, who is our corporate secretary, will actually time it, and it'll count down from 3 minutes. And she's very rigid about that. She'll say, oh, 3 minutes. She'll be because what we don't want to do is, well, we have a very nice and pleasant person speaking for 5 minutes, but we have someone else that's really delivering a challenging message and we hold them at 3 minutes. That's not fair. Everybody is held at 3 minutes. If you organize your thoughts in advance, 3 minutes is ample enough time to share your thoughts. The next thing is, it is not a debate. So we encourage you to not engage. Let the member state their piece and then we can respond afterwards, but it is not a debate back and forth. It is they're sharing their concerns. You can always have a conversation after the meeting, but it's not healthy, because what I've seen before is a member of the committee will then respond halfway between the members making their comments, the committee member responds, and then all of a sudden the 3 minutes goes off and they're like, well, I didn't get my 3 minutes because you were talking for too long. And let them speak for their 3 minutes. And then the chair or a management member of management team will respond afterwards. That way they have their full 3 minutes that they can share their concerns. Okay? Meeting handouts. Any handouts, well, the word handout is kind of going by the wayside because now we have these things, but we make these available, and Jessica will print out a couple copies. We don't print out, we normally print out just the agenda, and you'll see at the top, well, not this one, but on the, for the board meetings, we'll have actually a QR code where they can actually, the member that is attending can get a copy of the agenda, scan that QR code, and see the full packet that the board of directors is seeing. And we do that is because we never know how many people are going to show up. And sometimes for the board of directors meetings, those packets can be 100 pages long, and we get 1 or 2 people show up and we print 10 and we're throwing out and killing a bunch of trees. or the reverse. We print out 10 and for whatever reason we get 15 or 20 people in attendance, then we have an extra 5 or 10 people that are upset they don't have a packet. So we save some trees, we just print out the agenda, and you can scan and you can go directly to the entire packet. But the point being made here is any paperwork that the committee is sharing, such as our agenda and so forth, that is public. That is for the membership. So you can't come here and well, this paperwork is just for me. I'm referencing it in the meeting, but this is just for me. No, if it's here, it's open. Area of concern. It is important the committees stay within their respective areas of concern. It is the duty of each committee to discuss, analyze, and propose solutions for problems and opportunities within its area of concern. So what that means specifically is, for example, we wouldn't want to, this is the Lakes Committee, we wouldn't want to talk about the golf courses here. That is not this committee's area of concern. We shouldn't be spending our time on that. We should focus on lakes. Pretty straightforward, but the area of concern can also be within the subject matter. Specifically, management and the board is going to be responsible for setting the pricing of boat registrations. We'll hear input from members of the Lakes Committee, but ultimately that is going to be a decision of the management team and the board. So while it's in the area of concern, meaning it's about lakes, it's not really germane to the purpose of this committee. This germane, we're going to talk about things that are specific to the Lakes Committee and not that are, not Rick. Tell us exactly how you're training your rangers and what is your hiring practice, and now you've crossed into his area of concern and no longer the lakes area concern. Okay, so those are the things that it doesn't happen that often, but every once in a while a management member will go, you're kind of getting out of your area of concern, just be aware of that. Uniquely compiled information. The association shall not be required to uniquely compile information for a member unless the COO or the board, or agreed upon by the COO or the board. Complying with requests by committees for unique compilations must be approved by management. So sometimes we will have a member that will come in and ask for really detailed, extreme information. In some cases, we've had requests where we've gone back and said, boy, that's going to take a full day of an employee's time to compile this information. Is it really relevant? Is it necessary? And so forth. So we have information that we make available, like our utilization, the number of boat registrations. Those are made available on a yearly basis. But if someone came in, this might not be the best example, but okay, you have 200 motorized boats registered. How many are 20 feet long? How many are 19 feet long? How many are 18 feet long? How many are 17? That would be an extreme amount of detail. It would be unique, and we would not be required to provide that information. It's really not necessary in most cases. But if a committee member were to come and say, we had a report last month or the month before where I came in and I gave information about how many boats had been registered over the last several years and growth and so forth, that's absolutely acceptable for the committee to ask. But we don't want to go over an extreme basis. And many thanks. On behalf of the board of directors and the management team, we want to thank you for your willingness to serve on the Bella Vista community. This is, I believe in the committee and the board system. This is your representatives of the community, and you represent their interests with regards to lakes, and we thank you for your time. Any questions regarding that? kind of whirlwind training. Outstanding. This is the exact same training we give to the golf committee and the rec committee, so.
Thanks, Tom. It's always a good reminder to hear what our role actually is, and keep that in mind as we go through these meetings. So I see Doug McCash is here. Thanks, Doug, for showing up. So I'm going to skip down to the bottom of new business. Tom, do you want to kind of give us, or Rick, the incident we had at Loch Lomond the other day, and kind of tell us what it is so we can kind of talk about that?
So we received a call from our Lake Rangers received a call. Keep me honest, Rick. Lake Rangers received a call about a motorized surfboard, and the Lake Ranger, rightly so, was not certain whether that was a banned vessel or not a banned vessel. And so we started looking at it. Our policy states in general term personal watercraft. And I think it, and it specifically cites jet skis. And I think that most people would agree, jet skis tend to be loud, they tend to be fast, people doing jumps and all sorts of crazy stuff. That's on one end, but on the other end, these days you have motorized kayaks that go at a very slow pace and help you kayak and get around easier. That's on the other end of the spectrum. Is that a personal watercraft? And even though it's probably, in my opinion, it's not causing near the amount of disturbance as a jet ski. And then where does a motorized surfboard fall? And so we've asked Doug McCash. Doug McCash is the POA's general counsel. He's our attorney. And we brought him in today so that if the committee had any specific legal questions, he could answer them. We had a preliminary conversation about this, and as long as the and if I destroy it in any way, as long as the justification for the restriction is reasonable and specific and not arbitrary and capricious, chances are we can do that in a legal manner without getting ourselves in jeopardy. Outstanding. So the question at hand is, what is the definition of a personal watercraft? Not an easy question. What our thoughts are is if the Lakes Committee were to make a change, that it would probably go into effect January 1, because that's when the new registrations kick in. We would update the brochure that everybody gets, so forth. It would give this committee time to vote on it and so forth, make the changes and so forth. So if this committee wanted to create a subcommittee to research the matter or something of that nature, those are all options. We're not looking for an answer today. You might come up with an answer today, but we're not looking for an answer today. But here's the question is, what is a personal watercraft?
Does this type of vehicle have to be registered with pay a fee and get a sticker?
Well, kayaks have to register. They're non-motorized. Well, actually the definition is less than 10 horses. Less than 10 horses is considered non-motorized, or it falls into the same categories, non-motorized and less than 10 horses, and they pay $15 a year to register their vessel. Okay. So regardless of what it is, they're going to have to register. But
Sticker, yeah.
Yep, and maybe that's how we regulate it by horsepower. But the water sports industry is creating all sorts of new fun toys. we have to be willing to adjust our policies to adapt to those. There's a question.
So after talking to Tom about this a little bit, when I was made aware of it, I did a little research. I haven't done a lot of research, but I've done a little bit of research. So basically, from what I've been able to tell, there's electric surfboards. So a surfboard with basically the same thing that would propel a jet ski, except it's electric. And from what I've been able to determine, those things, some of them actually go up to 36 miles an hour today. They're very, very expensive. That model that I was looking at was a $13,000 model. There's also electric surf foils, and a foil basically is it's a ski, but it rides above the water, and the propulsion system stays below the water. So basically, when the person is balanced on top of this thing, they're going across the water, and the propulsion system is below the water, and they virtually make no wake whatsoever. I mean, they're just kind of gliding along. Those things can go approximately 25 miles an hour today. They are also very expensive. The cheapest model I was ever able to find was about $6,300, and they go on up to $12,000, $15,000. So they are in the same price range as jet skis and other, even some boats. So based on what Tom has said, I think this is one of those situations where we probably need to have a subcommittee kind of delve into this a little bit deeper and come up with some definition of what is a personal watercraft, and if we do allow these, how do we allow them, and if we, how do we move forward with this topic? Because it is a topic that's come up once already. It's probably going to happen more times in the future. So far, we've only gotten one call. So first of all, I want to open up. Do you guys have any questions to Doug McCash before we move on? Anything that you would like? Man, I'm real curious about the legal aspect of this, because right away when I first heard of this, first thing that hit me is like, what can we do? What can we not do as a POA? Any questions for Doug before we move on?
I had the same question you did. What the heck is a personal watercraft these days? Because I hadn't looked in a long, long time. So I did some research. Jet skis, just one manufacturer, Sea-Doo, has 6 different product categories. Sea-Doo also has brought out a hybrid, and when I say hybrid, think of a marriage between a jet ski and a small pontoon boat, and it's called Switch. And I don't know what you call that, but that's carrying between 170 and 230 horsepower. There are a number of electric kayaks out on the marketplace. Almost all of them are focused almost exclusively to support fishing. So they're running 3, 4, 5 miles an hour, those kinds of things. Low horsepower, low miles per hour. To pair with what you talked about, these surfboards, you've got not only called surfboards, you've got things that are called electric jet boats, and as well as electric paddle boards. Some of these surfboards and jet boats are easily 40 miles an hour, and they're small and they're hard to spot on the water, and they go fast. There's another product out called I believe a Cebu, which is an electric motorized board that you can hold on to. It'll tow you all around the water, and you're down in the water. They also manufacture something that'll go underneath the water for scuba and things like that. Those hydrofoils that Matt, you talked about, they're one of the brands I looked at was called E-Foil, and those things, they're expensive, but they will fly. They will go fast. I found 2 what are called foiling schools in South Florida. where they're teaching people how to use all this new equipment that's coming onto the marketplace. There's a company called Electric Surf in Austin that sells all of this. And I could have one on, you know, if I ordered one tonight, I could have it here this weekend. So I guess my question is, how do we deal with this continuing stream of product innovation and new product introduction as it relates to the personal watercraft category?
Well, you'd have to figure out how you're going to categorize things first, and whether you're going to restrict usage based on, you know, safety or speed or length, or you'd have to describe the personal watercraft in those terms first, and then have a discussion about, okay, is this something that we want to try to regulate or not? And if we do, what's the rational basis for regulating the use? If you say, we're going to allow blue jet skis, but we're not going to allow red jet skis, obviously that's not a rational basis for making a decision. It would be arbitrary. So the discussion would be, how do you regulate? Number one, do you want to regulate them? Which ones do you want to regulate? Categorize them, and then determine a rational basis for that regulation. Does that make sense?
Any other comments or questions from anybody?
Just real quick, I'm glad we don't have to make a decision today, because I think that framework, Doug, as you mentioned, is what we have to establish. It is the right question to be answering. My neighbor's got an e-foil. You're right, it's silent, it floats above the water and goes out when it's nice and flat and quiet, and it's really fun to watch, but you know, it's out there right now. That Sea-Doo pontoon that you mentioned, Windsor's got one of those too. It's really nothing more than a pontoon, at least from what I've seen.
I was just trying to explore.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I think
I think what's out there.
I think we've got to be really clear into what is the framework, Doug, as you said. It's probably about safety. It's probably about nuisance or perceived nuisance, and then we have to like create that structure and kind of evaluate and come back.
Okay. So based upon that, go ahead, Kevin, you have a comment?
These e-foils don't make a wake. So if they're zipping along on Lake Norwood at 40 miles an hour, they're gonna piss some people off. And I think we're gonna have to have speeds or something too.
Good point, because if you're zipping along at 25 miles an hour and
Yeah.
you're not making a wake, you're technically not violating.
You're not breaking
technically.
any laws that are.
Rick and I have had this debate over the years that, you know, idle speed or under 5 miles an hour or under. And I've seen signs to that effect in other lakes where they say idle or 5 miles under. So that might be an option on one of these deals. So that being said, I really do think we need to do a subcommittee. I'm not generally in favor of those for a topic like this that we need some deep dive help on. I think we need to have a subcommittee that kind of dives into this and comes back to the regular committee with some fact finding and some potential recommendations. So with that said, who would like to volunteer to be on that committee? Don't all volunteer at once.
Hey, Matt, can I just ask
Go
one
ahead.
other question?
Sure.
In regard to the research that you've done, these items that you're seeing, are they generally like one person use? I'm assuming like the fishing kayaks are probably one person use.
Yes, from what I've seen in my limited research, most
Is your microphone on?
Oh, I'm sorry. From what I've seen in my limited research, most of them are one-seaters. Now, Sea-Doo makes a jet ski that'll sit between 2 and 3. This Switch product is a small pontoon, so it could fit 3 or 4 easily. But the rest of them are singular in nature, from what I've seen.
Okay, so any volunteers to sit on this committee? Michael, Scott, Rob. Okay, I got Rob, Michael, Scott. Who did I miss? I had 4 people, didn't I? You jump in. All right.
I usually don't have a subcommittee that comprises a majority.
Yeah, so probably having 4 people is what we need, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, typically you don't, subcommittee should not have a majority, or then you just have the committee meeting, and then that committee meeting must be open to the public, or the membership.
So we got 4 right now. I think we'll leave it at that. Scott Sarver. Okay, so Rob Montgomery, Michael Coglin, Scott Hawes, and Scott Soboroff. You guys are the committee.
And to be clear, Matt, are we revisiting personal watercraft as well, or we're just gonna revisit the entire gamut, since there's a lot of new?
I would think so, and I've asked this question before, is what, and this is way before my time, I've been here 20 years, and jet skis have been banned from the entire time I've been here, and nobody's, I don't think Doug knows why they were banned. Was it a noise ordinance? Was it had to do with noise? Did it have to do with performance, or that sort of thing? I don't know. So yeah, we do. I think you do need to revisit the whole thing, and kind of, yeah, wrap our head around, you know, to Doug's point, you know, category, safety, speed. How are you going to length, and what rational basis can we move forward with? And I suspect that there's going to be maybe a lot of back and forth between Doug and management, because what we don't want to do is, you don't want to go down a path and work on something for a couple of months only to find out, well, man, that's totally illegal. So when we get close to determining what we might want to do, and hopefully Doug and Tom don't mind this, we'll kind of feed back to them as like, here's kind of the direction we think we'd like to go, and then run it by legal before we do stuff that, because, you know, working in the corporate world, the worst thing I could ever do is work on a project and come up with something. Well, we can't do that for various reasons. So I don't want to waste anyone's time. But yeah, if you guys could put that together, and you can meet whenever you want, as many times as you need to meet. And basically, hopefully we get something back by October. Or
yeah, that was the next question. When do you want the committee to report back to this? When do you want the subcommittee to report back to the Lakes Committee?
If we need to put this into a rules and regs form for next year, I would think by October we'd have to have something figured out.
Yeah.
So let's shoot for the October meeting.
2 questions. How will we handle any cases from here until then on the lake? And then, Doug, can we get pointed to the language that's in the regs of what we're currently sitting on?
Yeah, I'll make copies of that for you guys. Matt, can you send me their email addresses?
Absolutely. I'll copy Doug, and I'll copy you guys and Jessica, and loop everybody in so y'all have each other's emails.
I recommend one of you guys step up to be the coordinator, and then work with Jessica, our corporate secretary, and she can give you access to this room. If you want to meet here, she can give you access to this room, and that way you can have a central location. And at that same time, it makes it a lot easier if you need to have Doug or myself attend the meeting, or maybe part of the meeting or something like that. Then we can come and meet with you guys. But I would, yeah, we would want to get this finalized by probably the October meeting.
If not sooner.
Because you usually combine, the Lakes Committee normally combines their November, December meeting, which ends up taking place in December, and we're usually going to print at that time. So I would encourage the subcommittee to potentially work through their problem and maybe come back to this committee in August, if possible, latest September, and then give the committee as a whole a month to work on it, which would give us. So I encourage you guys to move forward with some level of speed, but not haste where you're making mistakes.
2 quick clarifications. I assume whatever recommendation we put forth, the board has to do the final approval based on our training.
So, yeah, we're gonna be incorporating this into, our policies. And so, yeah, they would vote on this.
And then is there any precedence for, in any other space, making something a violation or blocking it and having to give some certain level of notice to somebody? So if I'm an owner of these expensive toys and I hear in November that in January it's not allowed, do we have to address any grandfathering that maybe it's no new ones registered, and by the way, the ones that are registered, either is it effective immediately or effective within a year?
I think we did that a few years ago with the 26-foot and below boats were not allowed, or over 26 was not allowed. But we looked at what was registered, and there weren't any over at that point.
Correct. I recommend that's kind of a secondary problem. Let's have the committee and then the subcommittee and then the general committee come to a decision as to what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. And then on the items that are not acceptable, then we'll have to work with Doug on, I don't want, okay, so we have one person that has one hydrofoil. Should that dictate how we create our policies? No. Let's make that determination, and then we work with Doug on how we then implement it and how do we deal with exceptions and challenging situations. But let's go what's acceptable and what's not acceptable first. That's what I recommend.
Who wants to head up the committee?
I heard Scott volunteered.
We need somebody to kind of head it up. Come on, Scott, there's no video. You don't have to make any public speeches, so. All right, so Scott's the guy, he's the point person, and again, I'm available whenever you guys need me for correspondence or what have you. And I'll send out and get everybody on the same email so that we can move forward with this. Absolutely, I'll put phone numbers as well. And thank you guys for volunteering, and thanks Doug for coming into the meeting to give us a general idea of what we're up against here.
Do we have anything else for Doug, or can we cut him loose?
Rick, how are you going to handle any encounters from here, or how have you handled the encounters up to this point?
Oh, were you asking Rick? Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll let Rick be on the hot seat. I was just going to say, I would recommend from a safety perspective, governing it going forward rather than a specific mode of use. Does that make sense?
The hydrofoils and those kind of things, I mean, it is the intent of the original rule was for those, what we all think of as a jet ski. And so for these new toys, I think it's probably in our interest to just allow them for now. But when we have opportunity to speak to people, we can relay to them that kind of activity is under review, just so they know.
Are they registered, the ones that you're encountering?
Yes.
Okay, so it's kind of missing a checked box when they go up to the office. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, a lot of these are now battery operated. I mean, you know, mountain biking and regular biking has completely changed over the last several years with the motorized bikes, and so, you know, those motors are making their way to the lakes. So.
All right, so now I'm going to jump back to Rick and let him give his normal report. Sorry to jump around like this. I'm just trying to accommodate everybody in the room. So go ahead, Rick.
I'll give an abbreviated report. Just to review, this committee approved last time an amendment to the original drawdown on Lake Windsor. We're now going from October 16th to February 19th of 2024. That's about 3 weeks earlier on both ends of that, and that's to accommodate the request from the city for their improvements to the Chelsea culvert at the Pontoon Park area. Our POA rangers have been very busy. They logged 8,100 contacts in June, 582 folks removed, 656 contacts were by boat, and 127 hours on the water. That compares to 5,700 in May and 7,200 for the June time period in 2022. So we're up almost 1,000 contacts. The guys are still out looking for expired boat registrations. We need to see that 2023 sticker displayed on boats at this time. And speaking of the Rangers, we've had some considerable difficulty maintaining our hires for the summer. We bring new Rangers on in April, let them go in October, but for various reasons, we're still bringing in new Rangers, as we have had a number leave us over the last couple months. So we still have some guys out there that are in the process of being trained, and so bear with us there. If you have any questions, if you're stopped and have any questions, you can call my office for clarification if you are given a warning or a violation. We do have a third employee now that is certified PADI underwater diver. So we're able to do a lot of our own diving work in-house. The grounds maintenance folks have been out installing mossback fish habitat on Lake Ann this morning. I can provide the coordinates for that location as soon as I get them.
So what is the mossback fishing habitat?
So it's just a brand name of habitat that's various designs. These are about the size of a pallet, and they've got different branching on them. The plastic that's used the paraphyton, which is kind of biological material that adheres to things underwater, the film of stuff that gets on things. Their fish, bluegill and other fish will graze on that, and then that'll attract other fish. So that's been installed, like I said, today, and the guys are doing a lot of dock repair, replacing rotten wood. And under the Fisheries and Lake Ecology Department, our catfish in the aquaculture ponds are up to about 10 inches now. They'll be going out this fall. We have bluegill that are spawning in a different pond, and we're seeing fishing tournaments pick up over the last couple weeks, and we've got another one coming up this weekend. And our largemouth bass data is now has now been published on the web, so you can see 2023 data there.
You guys want to make a presentation at some point to the
We
committee?
can.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful.
We can set that up for later this fall when the agenda's a little bit lighter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's it.
Any questions for Rick?
Yeah, it kind of seems to have settled itself, but people down the street from me on Newquay, just on Lake Ann, one of the coves, there was a father-son team. They thought just a junker outboard, no cover on the motor, set yo-yo rigs, and no tags, nothing. And they had a slew of them. Well, they just left them. Those are supposed to be attended. But they just left them and came back a day or two later to check them. Well, by then, the people there was catfish that were pulled up out of the water and were almost dead that they had released, and et cetera. But he said he'd see these orange markers all around the lake, not just in the cove that they're at.
When we see that kind of situation, our rangers are advised, if they're not labeled, to remove them. And if they are labeled, but it appears like they haven't been attended, we will call the owners and see what's going on there.
So what constitutes attending? If they put them out, they're not supposed to be left out during the daytime?
No, 48 hours.
48 hours.
On anything that's attached to a tree or
But do they have to physically be on the lake during the whole time?
No,
Okay.
no. They have to be attended once every 48 hours. If it's a jug, if it's something that's free floating, they can only be out at night.
Okay. Jugs at night, anything else has to be attended every 48 hours.
Yeah. And we understand that they're likely going to be putting them out just prior to sunset, and again, taking them up just after sunrise. So that's kind of loose terms, but if they're out in the middle of the day, then they need to go away.
And as always, I keep reminding people of this because I get neighbors and people calling me about certain situations. Your best bet is just to call the lake rangers on a lot of this stuff. And I know people are hesitant to do that. I don't know why, but if you see something that looks suspect, pick up the phone and call the rangers.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people all the time, it's like, we do our best to patrol. These guys are out there. Normally they get there pretty quick. So if you see something that doesn't seem right, at least call and ask them about it. They can direct you, put you in the right direction.
And I'll also use this opportunity to make an appeal to those that like this type of fishing to make sure you're in compliance, because there's a lot of people out there that just don't like this type of fishing. And periodically we hear from groups that would like to have that kind of activity shut down. So.
Any more questions for Rick before we move on? How was July 4th?
Fairly uneventful. We had a ranger posted at our aquaculture ponds to make sure that we didn't have kids running up to that, and also to prevent any fireworks from smoldering through our pond liners. But it seemed like the fire department was good enough to kind of angle them away. We didn't have any problems.
Good deal. Thanks. Okay. The only other thing, well, I've got actually two things, but so the other thing that was brought up 2 meetings ago, we didn't discuss it the last time, was I'm calling it buoy simplification. So as you know, Rick, if you're new to the committee, the thought of the committee and a lot of people on the staff was that we had too many buoys, particularly in no-wake lakes. And there was some confusion on Lake Avalon. One of our buoys went missing, and it was about 20 or 30 yards off from the boat ramp. And ironically, when they replaced the buoy, we ended up getting more violations of people coming up on plane. And what I think is causing confusion is that in most lakes, if you see a no-wake buoy, once you pass the no-wake buoy, you're assuming that you can go at full speed. In Bella Vista, we have no-wake lakes. That's not necessarily the case. So up till now, we have removed all the no-wake buoys from the no-wake lakes. And hopefully there's signage in every boat ramp that says this is a no-wake lake. And so in order to avoid confusion, and to my knowledge, I think that's working pretty well. Okay. In addition to that, a couple of us brought up the fact that on Loch Lomond, particularly in Stony Kirk, if you launch your boat at Stony Kirk, you pass a minimum of 4 buoys that all say no wake before you get to the main body of the lake where you can actually go at full speed. And so the suggestion has been to eliminate those buoys, have a buoy at the head of the main cove, and have some sort of notification at the dock that this is a no-wake cove. Once you see the 2 buoys or the 1 buoy at the end of the cove, you're free to go up and operate in normal. You can plane out and go fast if you want to. I've looked at the Coast Guard regulations, and I know Rick has too, and to my knowledge, we're in compliance with Coast Guard rules as far as buoy markings and that sort of thing. So what I would like to do, assuming nobody has an objection, or obviously if you have objections or comments, I want to hear them, but what I'd like to do is give Rick permission in the near future to go ahead and remove any excess buoys from our wake lakes. Because I think let me add one more thing to that comment. So by doing so, I think most of our violations are happening because people are renting boats. And anybody who's been in this committee for several years, a lot of our violations occur when people rent a pontoon boat and they don't know the water. Well, if you rent a pontoon boat and you're new to the area, if you see a no-wake buoy, you slow down. The next time you see a no-wake buoy, you think, well, I can go fast again. So I think it just adds to confusion, more so with the renters, who are honestly violating the rules more often than residents. But I think it would just simplify our system. We can always go back and add more if this is a disaster, which I don't think it'll be. I've talked to Rick about potentially making some of those, since we'll have fewer buoys in total, to potentially buy maybe some bigger buoys at the mouths of these coves so that people have better visibility. So I think that's a possibility. So I'd like to open it up. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts about that? And again, we don't have to make a decision today, but I think at some point we need to give Rick some direction. And Rick, I don't know if you have any comments or.
It was mentioned one time, and I kind of agreed with it, that on the lakes that have those no ski buoys, if those could be a different color or something, because they kind of look like a no wake buoy when you get close to them.
So according to the U.S. Coast Guard, I think it's a triangle. It says limited operations, and limited operations is no ski, no wake. So according to the Coast Guard, at least I haven't found anything that would help us differentiate between no wake and no ski. The only thing I could come up with is putting a bigger buoy, because they make buoys that are about this big around, and they make them that are about that big around. And obviously the big ones are more expensive, but if you have fewer, potentially we might do that. That was one of the frustrating things that I found. There's really we are following Coast Guard approved signage, from what I can tell, from the research I've done.
Do the Coast Guard regulations line up with Army Corps of Engineer regulations?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I've Googled it and got on the internet and did 6 ways to Sunday and kind of ended up in the same spot every time.
Okay. The reason I ask is if you look at all the large lakes around Bella Vista, the vast majority of them are Army Corps lakes. Yeah. And their signage and their regs apply in those instances. And
from my limited experience on Beaver, I've actually spent more time on Grand Lake. They pretty much follow, there's a buoy, when you come into the cove, there's a buoy that says no wake, and they don't have buoys every 60 or 70 yards or whatever. So again, we can discuss this further. We can.
I've got one additional question. Mm-hmm. Are most of your issues with renters?
A lot of them are. A lot of them are, yes, but and not always. And the scenario that I like to talk about is, so you're new to the area, you launch a boat at Stony Kirk. You understand that the cove is no wake, but then you pass the first no wake buoy and you assume that the near shore side is no wake. Beyond the buoy is you can open up. Then you go around a corner and off in the distance you see another buoy and you're like, oh, I guess I messed up, but it's too late. And so then you pass that one and you think, oh, well, now I must be able to go full speed. And then you see the third and then the fourth. And then I think it actually has the opposite effect of what it's intended, the more buoys you have. So if you know that near shore is no wake, you're not going to open up until you pass the first buoy. And if it's the only buoy, then there's no confusion.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question that I did was, if 80% of our issues, and don't hold me in my number, hold me in my concept, if 80% of our issues are with renters, perhaps there's something we can do creatively with the rental agreement that would make wake areas and no wake areas crystal clear to anyone that looks at it.
I'll let Trey dive into that a little deeper, but so some of his issues are that people are so excited to get out on the water that they're not paying attention during orientation. And I'm sure he can attest to that.
And we also have some people renting boats that aren't POA. I know we have a boat dealer that has a couple, and then there's some Airbnbs out there that have boats, so they don't all come through the marina.
Right.
Or the boat ramps, for that.
And so my point was that if you could be more consistent with more like the lakes around here, when you get a visitor, at least if somebody's been on Beaver or been on Grand or have been on Table Rock or what have you, at least they have a general idea of what, we're the same, we're consistent with what other people are doing. Trey, do you have something to add to that? Is that Trey?
Trey does, and I'll step in.
Just two things. One, I think to further highlight what Rick is saying, specifically with Stony Kirk, the renters from us don't have the same issue that people putting in at Stony Kirk have. They are coming from the main body of the lake, seeing the first set of no-wake buoys, and then they're in a cove, which they can assume is no-wake the whole way. The extra buoys really become a problem when you are putting in at Stony Kirk and seeing a set of no-wake buoys that are just telling you you are in a no-wake area, not telling you that you are crossing from a no-wake area to a wake area. It's kind of the direction of traffic there is the issue with the Stony Kirk, with the additional Stony Kirk no-wake buoys. Like I say, that's renters don't have that issue because they're coming from the main body of the lake. It's not as much of a problem. We did do 2 years ago, we did a map which has the 3 different different regulations on our lake. There are 3 separate areas. There is a wake area, a wake but no ski area, and then a no wake, no ski, several no wake, no ski areas. So there's 3, I don't even know what you'd call that. There's 3 different kinds of water on our lake. And so all of the renters have a map there on the boat that shows them what area they're in. You know, looking at a map and knowing where you're out on the water can be difficult. Our Loch Lomond's not terribly difficult to tell, though. You can usually tell what part of the lake you're on just visually. But I think that's the addition. The thing to remember for renters and the Stony Kirk Cove is that they're coming from a different direction and they read it different.
And Scott, we've done we've had numerous discussions and working with Trey and Rick to educate boat rentals. We've done maps. We've done just a whole bunch of things over the past.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've covered the waterfront. I was just throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what might stick.
Any other thoughts, comments, suggestions?
Do we have a count on extra buoys, superfluous buoys? Rick, any idea on that? Because it's also a maintenance issue, right? We're not just talking about simplifying the waterways, but maintenance-wise, it could help you guys out, right?
Yes, I mean, we can take these buoys and keep them for spares if need be, and then like was talked about before, we could go with a larger buoy that could say more as well.
I like that concept personally, and we've been talking about this for several months. I think it's either time to maybe make another subcommittee or just maybe have Rick take the lead on it.
You know, I think the only thing I asked is in the Lakes newsletter that if the committee votes to go in this direction, we try and educate, because there's some property owners that are of the opinion that more is better. And so we're just gonna need to educate, or at least have something to point to and say, yes, we remove them, but if you read in your newsletter, on this date, you would have seen there was information about why we removed the buoys.
Yeah, and we can put this into effect next, at the first of the year. So we don't do something in the middle of the season that's different. I think would probably be a good idea too.
Okay. So, do we want to
Matt,
discuss
can I jump
more?
in with a thought?
Go ahead, Ross.
So, yeah, thanks. I've lived underwater for about 20 years. I absolutely agree with what you're throwing out there, Matt. When I first got here, I was thoroughly confused. I had to ask several people to explain the buoy concept. Never got a clear answer. I personally wouldn't overthink this. I think you guys have the right concept out there. Follow the U.S. Coast Guard. I do agree that we really need to look at something that calls out the no tubing, skiing, towing. Behind Rick and Matt, I just sent you guys a text of a buoy example, what that looks like potentially out there. But I would be all for this. I wouldn't overthink it. I would just follow the U.S. Coast Guard. I've lived on at least 3 or 4 different lakes, and this is by and far, I can't explain what we do here and why.
Okay. I personally don't think there needs to be a subcommittee. To me, this is fairly cut and dried. So do I have a motion? And I would word, just a suggestion here. I would word the motion to allow Rick and his team to implement U.S. Coast Guard approved buoy standards on all lakes to be accomplished by the first of the year. Is that kind of simplified enough for you? So,
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. So Rick, just as I like Tom's idea. I think communication will work, and that way, I don't know what your schedule is. You may be really busy in the next month or two, but you've got the rest of the year to get it done and communicate it and that sort of thing. The only other thing I have on the list, and I've sent you guys a copy, is the 2024 capital budget recommendations. So I've kind of cleaned up the list that we had last year and put what I thought were things that still needed to be included on the list. I mean, unless anybody has anything new, I don't think we need to discuss anything already on here. We kind of went through this at the last meeting, but as you talk to people in the community, as you look around, as you see things that we might need to invest funds on, by all means, bring them to the committee, or we can add them to the list. Kevin?
I've got one. When Rick did his speaker thing at the library first of the month, somebody had asked about more fish cleaning stations. And if we're gonna try to get people to take more smaller bass and stuff, they're gonna clean them there if there's a cleaning station rather than take them home. Is that? I don't remember which part he said he wanted one at.
Was it at Tyree? Is that?
It was Tyree Park, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely something that would work, that we could put there. That's been the kind of thing that we've partnered in a bit. Seems to be something that the Fly Tires have liked to help us with, and so, but yeah, that would be great in that location. Yeah.
And there might be.
Lowman already has 2, but of course it's the largest lake. So.
Right.
So what, do we have any on Windsor?
No.
We have 1?
1.
Okay. And the other lakes?
Each lake has 1.
Each lake has 1. So we might just look at putting an additional 1 on, let's say, Windsor, and maybe, and what's that? Avalon. Windsor and Avalon, maybe Ann. Okay.
I'd say no, probably to Avalon, because the only other place to put one would be near the ramp, and that's too close to the beach.
That's pretty tight. Yeah, we wouldn't want one there. That wouldn't work out real well. Good point. Hey, Mom, I stepped on a fish head.
Okay, so new guy question. Do we have typically you'd say, what's our budget? What's the estimate for each one of these? Priority, what's above the line, below the line? What's gonna get funded, not get funded? So how does this list go then get taken into action? And how do we know what would or would not get above and below the line?
Rick, you want to take that one?
Let me jump in, Rick.
Okay.
So what we'll do, we go to all three of the joint advisory committees and ask them the same question. Often it's for capital projects, but it doesn't have to be. It could be an operations budget item like we need more lake rangers, or we want more fish to be stocked, or something of that nature. And we ask the committees to force rank them. What's most important, what's least important, and so forth. And we do our best to try and include as many of them as possible. We don't have a set budget that the committee works with. It's all operating under Rick's budget, and so he's going to go in and say, okay, well, doing the sinkhole is going to be pretty expensive, but continue the trout stocking program is a lot less expensive. So unfortunately, I can't do the one, but I can do the other. And he'll take all that information and he'll come back to the committee and say, hey, listen, this is what I was able to get approved, and unfortunately, this is what I was not able to get approved. So.
Okay, thank you. Just on repaving Lake Windsor, I look at it many hours every day. That is a very, very busy dam. A lot of people come up from Tanyard Creek. There's 2 legacy piers, the new fly tires, floating dock, the ramp. Every morning there's probably 6 to 8 trailers from bass boats. So I would just highly encourage, number 2, I think our community has a few core areas where people come to assemble, and Tanyard Creek and that whole surrounding area is one of our big attractions where it gets heavily used. So it is kind of narrow, potholey. There people like to walk, people like to recreate, and then there's all the trailers coming through there. So just double down on that one.
I think it's a good point, and that's why it's like number 2 behind this spillway. So again, we don't have to spend any more time on this, but as you go out in the community and as you look at this list and as you think of things, just bring them to my attention or bring it to the committee's attention, and I can add it to the list, because that's what I do. Is I hear things in the meeting, I keep adding them, and I'll put the fish cleaning stations on there, Kevin. So, all right. I think we got everything on the list. Open forum. Sir, do you have anything you want to say?
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Portet, and I live on Lake Ann.
Okay.
My property is there. A few weeks ago, I sent an email with pictures, etc., suggesting what you just talked about regarding the no-wake zone on wake lakes. My property is right on front of the last buoy on Lake Ann that says no wake. As you have brought over, there's 2 buoys, one right after the lake ramp, and then a second buoy right on front of my house. Every time a boat runs their engines, the motor from the first buoy, as you mentioned, without knowing that the second buoy says no wake. I agree 100% on what you're trying to do. A bit late, but it's been at least approached. One of the things also is what a person who lives in the lake and sees something like that happen, what are the recourses? My recourse has been, at this point, I purchased an air horn, and every time that a boat goes fast on the no-wake zone, I blow the horn several times. Sometimes they pay attention and they slow down. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they give me a finger. Sometimes, whatever, okay? My issue is my boat has been in the water. I have a small sailboat that I had to pull out of the water several times because these wake runners have created such waves that my boat keeps hitting against my dock constantly. I have it out, being reed fiberglass, and trying to put it back on the water, But if I put it back on the water and nothing is being done, would be a futile effort. We have been in the community for several years. I agree with last month's meeting, Paul had mentioned that our amount of kayakers, amount of boats has increased. Rick also mentioned that the situation with increasing the amount of rangers has been somewhat taken care. He mentioned last month that we had 10 rangers, but I do not know if those 10 rangers are all for the lake or are on the gun range or somewhere else. I would like to know how many lake rangers are available.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. Rick, you want to, or Tom?
Okay.
So one of your first questions was regarding enforcement. Our governing documents, the POA's governing documents, specifically states that we cannot fine people. So that would be the most effective way. You see people violating rules, you go up, you pull them over, you give them a ticket for $100, and that gets their attention. We can't do that. Our rangers, our lake rangers, do a really good job of pulling people over and talking to them and encouraging them to follow the rules, but we can't do that in a punitive manner. Regarding our lake rangers, do patrol more than just our lakes. They do patrol our parks and so forth. Their primary purpose is the lakes, but we do use them at the parks on occasion.
Do you have the direct line to the lake rangers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would encourage you to use that.
And I have called several times, but nothing under that.
Okay.
Okay, last year, in the winter time when you were training rangers, I called, and because one of the rangers was speeding under the wake zone all the way through. I talked to the chief ranger, I'm not sure exactly who I talked to, whoever answered the phone. I mentioned that, and he mentioned they were training a ranger in the boats there. And that particular ranger was not following the rules of the POA.
I think the important thing Rick was trying to get across is when you see a violation, call immediately. There's nothing more frustrating to us than when we get a complaint and it happened a week ago. And there's really nothing we can do at that point. The quicker you call, the quicker we can do something.
I agree with you 100%, and I appreciate your information, but times that I have called, I get no response or nothing's been done. There's no ranger available to come and take care of the situation. By the time the ranger, if the ranger comes over, the boat is gone, and that violation is done. So that's that was another question, but my 3 minutes were gone. And I don't know if anybody has any other questions, if I can extend it or not and break the rule. But what is the schedule of the rangers? Are they supposed to patrol every day? Are they supposed to patrol every other day?
No.
Because during this 4th of July weekend,
Rick, I'll take this.
the ranger was there only one time, and was the 4th of July in the afternoon, when everybody else was getting home.
Well, like I said, we encourage you to, when you see a violation, call as quick as possible. We have a lot of lakes. We have 7 lakes, so we have a lot of territory to cover.
Yes.
And you know, sometimes it's hard to catch the people. They're already off the lake, or you know, the description is not clear enough for us to really know exactly what boat it is. You know, so there's challenges. But I can tell you this is Rick and John and Bob do a really good job training our lake rangers to do, in my opinion, a really good job given the challenges that we have. We don't want to have a police state where there's a ranger at every single turn. It's too expensive and we can't afford that. But call as soon as you possibly can, and I'm confident that they're going to do as best as they can to take care of the problem.
Hopefully, with what measures are you trying to achieve, that will resolve somewhat of the problem. But it's not only renters or people that just come from outside. A lot of people are native and they live in the area, and they're keep enforcing, not following the rules.
Okay.
My other suggestion is.
Sir, your time's about up. If you want to send me anything in an email, you're welcome to do that, okay?
That is fine, I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else, nobody else in the audience? Anything else before we wrap it up from anybody on anything?
August 9th will be our next meeting.
August the 9th, thank you, Kelly.
Hey, Rick, couple things on your must-dos, nice-to-dos. If you could give us some information on how many interns you're gonna need.
We, if we have any at all, it'll be one.
Okay, same as last year.
And we don't, I haven't gone out of my way to search for one. When someone that is interested in this line of work approaches me, that's when I try to fill a position. I don't necessarily, because we're trying to help someone, an internship tries to help someone along in their career. I don't want to grab someone by the hand and say, hey, come do this, if it's not in their interest. So.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question, we're doing the same thing at Fly Tires that we're doing here in terms of budget development and putting a budget in place for the balance of the year and into next year. So any information you can pass along, you know, we'll get it to Kevin and the board and see what we can do to be supportive.
Okay. Has any thought been given to give sounds like you're having trouble keeping rangers to maybe increasing, bumping the pay a little bit to retain those guys a little more? Yeah, just a lot of competition out there. Okay.
And I'll say that this year, it's not just pay. We've just had a lot of bad luck with folks that for whatever reason can't give us their time, whether they have family commitments or health issues, or it's just we're just in a run of bad luck as far as that goes.
Okay. All right, anything else before we close it out? Meeting adjourned. See you guys on August the 9th.